And a buyer typically isn't going to buy a property that has a lis pendens on it, even though they can still purchase the property all cash without a title company. But a title company will not insure a transaction that has a lis pendens on it or any liens on it. They want it clear if they're going to sell it to somebody else and insure the transaction. So this is very, very important. All right. Today, we're going to be talking about some of the pitfalls and some of the challenges that come with real estate wholesaling and the acquisition side and even the disposition side. I'm not going to really go into too much acquisition today. I'm just going to talk about some of the challenges that we have. And I have a perfect deal that I'm currently working with right now. And I'm just going to really just give you a synopsis of what's been going on so that way you can kind of learn from it. Okay, so we have a transaction. Now, this is it is a wholesale deal, and I'm going to walk you through it. It's over in Atlanta, Georgia, and it's a property that we got under contract. All right, we are using creative financing. It is being purchased subject to, which means that I'm taking over the mortgage. And at the same time, it's a hybrid, so I'm also going to be making monthly payments to the seller. So I'm taking over the mortgage and I'm making monthly payments to the seller. The numbers are pretty good. The rents cover the cost of the mortgage and the second mortgage that is being paid to the seller. All right. So the numbers are really well. I found a local investor out there to purchase that property. They're going to be buying it. They're going to be keeping it. They're going to be using it as a rental. All right. Now, with the numbers, when you get a creative deal, this is the misconception, is that sometimes people think that using subject to financing, or in this case, subject to hybrid financing, a lot of people tend to think that when you do that, you can't wholesale an opportunity like that. But see, if you're good, right? If you're good on the acquisition side, what you'll do is you'll make the down payment low enough. And typically when you're doing subject to financing or creative financing, where you're taking over the mortgage, typically you want to keep the down payment to the seller at about 5%. And the reason that you want to keep it at around 5% is because an investor can get better terms if they go directly to the bank. Or, yeah, they can get better than 5 or 10% typically. Or, excuse me, they can get the same type of loan if they go to a bank. They can get a 10%, they can get a 15% if they just go to a conventional bank. Now, if you do that and you keep the down payment around 5%, and then you add a wholesale fee, an assignment fee, your fee of another 5%, well, what's happened is now you've got enough to where your threshold is at about 10%. So if you, as the investor, as the wholesaler, are able to lock up a subject to contract, right, whether it be hybrid or not, it doesn't matter, and you keep the down payment at around 5%, and then you keep your wholesale fee at around 5%, you're now at about 10%. And that's 10% of the total cost of the property. Okay, so if the property is going to be sold for $250,000, well, then you could potentially earn, you could potentially charge $25,000. And if you split that in half, $12,500 would be able to go to the seller, and then $12,500 would be able to go to you as your assignment. That's typically the way a subject to creative financing deal is going to be structured if you want to earn a fee. Now, if you're an investor and you want to just purchase it for yourself, well, then truth is you can try to get it as low as 5% and still come away with a win for yourself, right? Because you're not charging yourself a wholesale fee. So you just pay the 5% down payment to the seller. All right, those are the standard numbers. You might be able to get away with a little bit more depending on how you structure the monthly payment. All right, but we're not going to go into a whole creative financing class today. I just wanted to give you an idea of the idea of the concept, right, of what we did on this particular deal. So, and those weren't the numbers on that deal. That I'm just giving you numbers to use as an example. So anyway, we got the deal. We put it under contract. I got it under contract, and then I immediately started promoting it to other people. What I did was I used a company that could go out there and take photos for me. I've shared this company with people before. That company is called BPO Photo Flow, BPO, Brian, Paul, Oscar, BPO Photo Flow. And if you go in there, you can purchase the investor's package. It's going to cost you either $35 if it's vacant with a lockbox, or it's going to cost you $50 to $60 if they have to schedule an appointment. All right. They'll go out there, they'll take the photos for you. They're not everywhere. I want to make sure that you know that they're not located everywhere, but they are in most major metro cities. Okay. And it just so happened that in this particular city, I was able to get them to go out there to take pictures. So they got the pictures for me. I knew what the damage was. I had adjusted the price a little bit for that. And then we started marketing it. So we start marketing it and we start blasting it to all the local investors in the area. and the numbers were good, and we finally got it under contract. So now the property's under contract, and it was similar to the numbers that I shared with you earlier. 5% down, right? That goes to the seller, and then 5% to the assignor, which in this case would be me, the person wholesaling. Okay, so total investment for the buyer is going to run you 10% plus their closing costs. All right. Now, once we were in escrow, the buyer made the deposit. Okay. Now, this is very important. I'm going to be talking about this a little bit later on. But when you're assigning a property to somebody else, you need to make sure that in your wholesale contract, in your assignment contract to that end buyer, to the assignee, you are the assignor. The assignee is the person you're assigning the contract to. You need to stipulate in those agreements that now we have our own assignment contracts, and I can share it with you if you need it, but you need to make sure that there's language in there that stipulates that unless it's a title issue, that deposit is non-refundable. Okay. You need to put that in the contract. You need to make sure that it's put that in the contract because, there's times where you put that in there and then the buyer decides to back out and then they want to get their deposit back. All right. So here's the deal. Make sure that that language is in there so that way it protects you and it protects the seller, right? Because you still want the transaction to close so that the seller can get paid and you can get paid, right? So make sure that that language is in the assignment contract. Now, what are your options if the buyer doesn't make the earnest money deposit? And that's another thing. In our assignment agreement and in your assignment agreement, you should have something stipulating that the earnest money deposit is to be made within 24 hours of them approving the assignment agreement, right? So 2 things, you have to make sure that the deposit is non-refundable, right? Unless there's a title issue. So the only way that they can get the deposit back, the buyer, the investor, is if there's a title issue related reason that the seller cannot close. And the second thing is you want that deposit within 24 hours, right, of them approving the assignment agreement. Now, that being said, I want you to think about this. The more attractive the deal, the more likely the buyer is going to run to the escrow company, to the closing attorney, to the title office to make that earnest money deposit. The more attractive the deal. Okay. So experience has taught me that when there's a lot of meat on the bone and there's a good margin there for the investor, right? The investor will make that deposit right away. Why? Because they don't want you assigning it to somebody else. They will have no problem doing it. So that leads me to my next point, which is the better you get at negotiating these deals, the better you get at negotiating the opportunities, the better you get at negotiating the price in which you are acquiring the property, the less likely it is that you're going to have a buyer that goes to and doesn't make the deposit after they've signed the assignment agreement. Could it still happen? Sure. Has it happened to me? Many times. Things happen. Life gets in the way. Sometimes people change their mind. They're excited one day and then they're not excited the next day. The biggest variable in our business is people, right? And you can't control people. You can only try to set up certain safeguards and certain SOPs, standard operating procedures, to try to, prevent as much chaos as possible. Okay. And that's why the assignments agreements need to stipulate in there that the deposit, and I'm repeating this because I want everybody to remember it, the deposit is non-refundable unless it's a title issue, title issue related. And 2, the deposit has to be deposited within 24 hours. Again, the more attractive your deal is, the more likely the buyer will make the deposit. Okay. The less attractive your deal, right? So let's say that your deal isn't that attractive. The profit margins aren't that great. It's minimal. It's still a deal. Maybe somebody could pick it up. They'll make some the cash flow on it if you get it subject to when they rent it out. Maybe they're making an extra $100 to $200. It's still an opportunity. And for the person that is thinking more long term, hey, I'll just purchase this. I'll put this property in my portfolio and I'll watch it grow over the next 5 to 7 years. Right, that type of buyer, they tend to slowly go make that deposit. Right? Yes, they may want the deal. Yes, they may still close on it. Yes, everything may go smooth. But the tighter the profit margins, the slower the buyer is to run to go make that deposit. Okay, so keep that in mind. And that's why it has a lot to do with how good you are at negotiating the price that you're getting this property under contract for. Okay, so let's say buyer doesn't make a deposit. Okay, so you've got the assignment agreement. They sign the assignment agreement, and then within 24 hours, they're supposed to make the deposit, and then they don't make the deposit. Right? What are your options now, and what is it that you can do? Well, you can do a couple different things. Number one, if they don't make that deposit within 24 hours of them signing it, the contract is null and void. Okay, they are in breach of contract. All right. Now that's another thing for a lot of wholesalers and investors who are just getting started. Fortunately, I have a 25-year background as a real estate broker. But for wholesalers, these assignment agreements that they sign, those are contracts, right? They're legal contracts. So if they don't make that deposit within 24 hours of you assigning the contract to them, that's it. Breach of contract, contract's done, right? So legally, you're protected by using the right assignment agreement, and then you can move on to the next buyer. All right. So those are your options. All right. Now, what if the buyer does make the deposit? Okay. And then the buyer decides after they've made the deposit that they want to cancel the transaction. Well, the assignment agreement stipulates that the deposit is non-refundable unless it's something title issue related. Okay. In other words, maybe there's too many liens on the property. Maybe the seller can't sell the property anymore. Maybe there's something called a lis pendens. Okay. What is a lis pendens? For those of you who don't know, a lis pendens is basically when someone sues the owner of that property. And what they do is they basically put something on title preventing the property from being sold. That's a lis pendens. It is a cloud on title. So they're not going to be able to transfer title. No lender will lend on that property, whether hard money or not. And a buyer typically isn't going to buy a property that has a lis pendens on it, even though they can still purchase the property all cash without a title company. But a title company will not insure a transaction that has a lis pendens on it or any liens on it. They want it clear if they're going to sell it to somebody else and insure the transaction. So this is very, very important. All right. So buyer makes a deposit. And then what happens is it's clear title. The closing attorney, the title company, the escrow company guarantees that there's clear title. There's nothing wrong. Buyer says, I want to cancel the transaction. I'm not going to be able to do this. Give me my money back. Well, they signed an assignment agreement, and the assignment agreement stipulates that deposit is non-refundable. You lose that deposit. Okay. Now, typically what happens in those cases is that deposit then goes to the assignor. And because you have an assignment agreement with that buyer, that end buyer, the assignee, you get to keep their deposit. All right. And you can request that escrow release that deposit to you. All right. That's how the assignment agreement protects you, protects the seller, and also protects the buyer. Okay. So that's what the assignment agreement is. Now, let's go back to the transaction that I'm currently in right now. So we go and I assign the contract to an end buyer. Buyer purchases it. Buyer agrees to the assignment agreement, end the terms of the contract. And that's another thing. When you are assigning a contract to somebody else, to an end buyer, they are going to want to see what is called the underlying contract. So get used to that language, get used to that word. The savvy investors are going to be like, okay, fine. So I'm purchasing this property from you. I'm purchasing it as an assignment agreement, which I'm totally cool with. I need to see the underlying contract before I sign this assignment agreement, before I agree to that. Now, if they're going to agree to an assignment agreement and you're assigning the contract to them, they want to know, what is it that I'm getting myself involved in? What are the terms of the contract? Okay. So, here's the deal. If you're going to assign those terms and you're wholesaling a contract, in other words, there's no creative finance, there's no subject to, you're just simply going to wholesale the contract. A simple wholesale contract, a simple wholesale transaction is where you get the property under contract. Let's say, I'm using rough numbers. Let's say you just get it for $100,000. You have it under contract for $100,000, and then you assign it to another end buyer, and you're going to assign it to that end buyer for $110,000. Okay, that's a simple wholesale assignment fee. Now, you don't necessarily want the end buyer to know, right, that you're purchasing it for 100. Or you don't care. Most of the time, I really don't care. I just tell people, look, this is the assignment fee that I'm making on it, right? Again, depending on how good you negotiate your price, right, there really shouldn't have any bearing on what the investor is paying for it, as long as there is a profit margin for them. Okay, what you got it for and what you're selling it to them for is really irrelevant, so long as their profit margin remains intact. So if I told Mr. or Mrs. Investor, I said, look, I'm getting it to you for $110,000. I have it under contract for $100,000, and I let them know that I'm making a $10,000 assignment fee. hey, they should be good with it as long as they understand that their profit margins are still X dollars. All right. Now, there's some people that come from a different school of thought. There's some people that are like, no, I'm going to block out what purchase price I got it at. You can do that too. You can redact the contract. You can block out your purchase price, because the thought process there is that the buyer knows what you got it for, and they could potentially use that to negotiate against you and say, no, I'm only going to pay you a $5,000 wholesale fee. All right. This goes back to what I said earlier, though. The better you get in negotiating your price, with the seller, the better the profit margin is for the end buyer, right? If you've done a good job negotiating a good price and you've left enough of a profit margin there for the buyer, then the buyer really isn't going to contest your assignment fee as long as their profit margin remains intact. The buyer is still going to go make that deposit within 24 hours, especially if the deal is sweet, especially if the deal is profitable. So I keep saying it over and over again. This is where it really depends on your skill at negotiating and getting it at the best price that you possibly can. Okay. Now, my buyer ends up making the deposit. We go into into title. Contract's already been assigned, and I'm still involved in the process. Okay, this is very, very important, because there are times where people assume that just because you've assigned the contract over, to somebody else, to another end buyer, that doesn't mean that from that point it's hands off and you don't do anything, right? You're still involved in this, because you're still going to have to facilitate a smooth handoff. You're still going to have to pass the baton on to the other buyer. All right. Remember, you were the initial point of contact, right? The seller doesn't really know that you have an end buyer quite yet, unless you've prepared them from the very beginning. In other words, when you are talking to sellers at the very beginning, it's very important that you share with them that you have multiple exit strategies. So, Mr. or Mrs. Seller, I just want you to know, look, I'm excited about working with you. I'm excited about what we're doing together. I'm excited about helping you move on to the next chapter of your life. I want you to know that there are multiple exit strategies for me here. Okay. I may just keep this, fix it up, and just rent it out. I may purchase this and turn it into an Airbnb. I may bring on other partners who are going to partner up with me on this transaction, and they're going to work with me on this. Or I may just sell it to another investor who decides that they're going to do this themselves. I'm not really sure how it's going to work out yet. I just want to prepare you that these are all the possibilities. And I want to prepare you that I have a team of people that I'm working with. So I have contractors, I have real estate agents, I have end buyers, I have interior designers. I have all these people that I'm working with to make sure that this project goes smooth. And so if there's a time, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, where I call you back and I say, hey, listen, I need to get John, the interior designer, in there, because Jane, the investor, wants to see the property too at the same day, I hope that's okay with you. All I'm asking is for reasonable access to the property so that I can get my team in there when I need to. Is that okay with you? And listen, that was a little long-winded, but you can summarize that, and you can shorten it up. You understand what it is that I'm saying. You need to prep the seller from the very beginning that you do have multiple exit strategies and that you do have multiple partners in different arenas of this business. And so that you will need some type of reasonable access just to get these people in to ensure that the project goes smoother. All right. So prep them from the very beginning. Anyway, so now we go into escrow, we go into title. It is 9:21. Today I can only go until 9:30, but I just wanted to share with you where we're at right now. So right now, currently, we found out that there's 4 liens on the property. All right. What are the 4 liens? Well, the first primary lien is a mortgage, and the primary mortgage is what is owed on the property, and that's the one that we're taking subject to. What we discovered was that the seller had also done some type of a loan modification with HUD, the Housing and Urban Development. And so now what they did was they're in some. It's not a full loan modification. It's more of a forbearance program where they then took whatever payments they hadn't made, and then they put it on the back end of the loan. When they did that, what it did was it created a second loan, a second mortgage. So there's actually another loan that she has on the property. So 2 of them are loans. The third one that they have was an HOA lien. Okay, so for whatever reason, she was having a disagreement with the HOA. She ran into some problems. There was some stuff that the HOA wanted her to do to the property. Never got done. HOA smacked her with a fine, a penalty, and a lien of like $3,000. So in order for her to actually sell this property, she is going to have to pay off that lien in order to get clear title, right? Then there was a fourth lien. The fourth lien was from a real estate company that she had done business with a year before. Apparently, what she had done was she thought about selling the property a year before, didn't go through with it. And part of their listing agreement with her was that if she ever did sell it again, they would be entitled to 3% of the sale. Okay, of the purchase price for whatever it sold for. And they filed a memorandum and they recorded it. Now, some people, this organization, I haven't really researched them. So some people call this an unscrupulous business practice. I've never done anything like that, but that is what they did. And so now I'm having to negotiate even with this real estate company. Going back to what I just said a short while ago, once a contract is assigned to an end buyer, a lot of people think that it's hands off, you're done, and now you can just walk away and wait to get paid. And that's not the case. I have been a part of this transaction from cradle to grave. We're getting closer to finalizing everything. But what I'm saying is that I've been negotiating with that real estate company. I've been trying to negotiate with the HOA, and I'm trying to get all of these fees down for the seller because remember, what did I say at the very beginning? This particular transaction was a subject to hybrid, which means I'm taking over the mortgage. So I'm not paying off, I'm not coming in with a huge down payment. We're only giving her a 5% down payment. And that 5% down payment, after we're done paying off all of the liens and everything else that needs to be taken care of, well, not the mortgage liens, but the HOA liens and the real estate lien and the memorandum that they filed, after all that, she's not going to get any money. So now I'm having to go back in there and I'm having to negotiate with these two entities, which is another thing that you're going to have to learn how to do. Don't just assume because you get a property under contract that, again, it's just going to close on its own. You're really going to have to nurture and cradle the process, right? From start to finish. Okay, you're not going to be able to just walk away. That's not how this is going to work. It's going to take some effort on your part. Okay, so one of the things that I've had to do with this particular transaction, and again, one of the benefits that I have is that I have a long history of being a real estate broker, so I know how to do these things. I know how to go in there and negotiate with the HOAs. I know how to go in there and negotiate with the other real estate company that filed that memorandum on that property. So if you don't have these skills quite yet, don't worry about it. That just means that you're going to have to align yourself. You're going to have to find a mentor in the business that does have these skills, that has dealt with these dilemmas before, because you're going to come across them. They're going to happen. Okay. So those are some of the pitfalls that you're going to be dealing with when you are wholesaling a real estate contract. Okay. Number one, you're going to have to deal with the buyer that may or may not make their deposits. Okay. And I told you how to overcome that. Number one. Number two, excuse me. I taught you how to overcome that. You're going to need to have a really ironclad assignment agreement, right? And that assignment agreement has to stipulate that the deposit is non-refundable unless it's a title issue related problem that is preventing it from being sold, or there's a cloud on title. And two, the deposit has to be made within 24 hours of the assignment agreement being executed. And when you hear the word executed, that's another fancy way of saying signed, okay? And then number two, you also need to make sure that the deposit is in fact made within 24 hours. Okay. That means that you have to call the title company, you have to call the closing attorney, you have to call the escrow company, and you have to ask them, hey, was the deposit made? Hey, can you send me a receipt of that deposit so we know that it's done? Okay. So that's another thing, another pitfall that you're going to have to you're going to have to learn how to overcome or deal with or follow up with. And then lastly, you also need to make sure that you're ready for working this transaction all the way to the very end. Even if you assign the contract, even if you assign the contract, you're still going to be involved. You're still going to make sure that the transition from you to the next person is smooth. You're going to prepare the seller. You're going to have set proper expectations for the seller. You're going to have said things like, I need reasonable access for my team. My team includes real estate agents, general contractors, home inspectors, investors, lenders. These are all people that are part of my team that I use. Some of them are my investors that are helping finance a transaction. Some of my investors are going to be the ones that are going to come in and help me with the inspection. So you need to prepare them and say, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, make sure that I have reasonable access, just reasonable access so that I can get them inside. Okay. All right. And that's pretty much all. And then negotiations. You're going to have to learn how to negotiate. Once the deal is in contract, you will have to learn how to negotiate, because sometimes liens will pop up. Now, in some cases, Some escrow companies will say, hey, I can put you into contact with the lien holder. But most escrow companies, most closing attorneys, most title companies, they're not going to do the negotiations of those liens for you or for the seller. They are a neutral third party, and it's their job just to notify all parties of these liens. They're not going to negotiate them down. So if you're going to do that, then you're going to have to learn how to negotiate any potential liens down that could kill the deal. All right. And there's ways of doing that. So for instance, I'll give you one last example. Having to call that company that has filed that memorandum on my seller's property. Hey, James. Of course we can. I'm going to make sure that you shoot me an email or just DM me on Facebook, but you can reach me at paul@dispodragons.com. paul@dispodragons, plural.com. paul@dispodragons.com. Okay. I lost my train of thought. Anyway, you're going to need to learn how to negotiate these items. All right. And again, if you don't have that skill yet, don't worry about it. Just find someone that can help you negotiate liens down. Okay. You're just going to pay them off. You're going to have to find a way to pay them off or get them wiped completely. That's something that I'm working on right now in the current transaction that I'm involved in. Okay. Yeah. I'll chat you. Let me chat you real quick. I'm going to type it in and then I am going to have to say goodbye. All right. If that doesn't work, James, use my Gmail. All right, use both. Okay. So with that, I'm going to cut it short today. I can only go until about 9:30. I have to get my 16-year-old daughter over to the DMV so that she can get her real estate license. Excuse me, driver's license. Now you know where my brain is. It's always on real estate. All right, everybody, have a great day. Hopefully you found some valuable information here and some valuable content. Remember, we're going to be back on tomorrow at 9 a.m. Every Tuesday and Wednesday, 9 a.m. We have these meetings. We have these trainings. If you know of someone that can benefit from these trainings, have them go to our Facebook group so that they can join. Our Facebook group is Dispo Dragons. It's just Dispo Dragons. So go onto Facebook, look us up there, Dispo Dragons, and then they can join. Okay. If you need any other assistance, just an FYI, if you go to our website, okay, I will do a quick screen share with this just so that you have it. Let's go to the web real fast. A lot of people don't know this. I'm going to hopefully I'm sharing my screen. Share it real fast. But we have mentorship within the organization now. We have one-on-one coaching. There's the link to our private Facebook group, but we have a bunch of great free tools on there. Free tools. So we have a training on there now called How to Get Your First Deal. It's free, okay? And it's a bunch of videos. It's like 10 different videos on how to get your first deal. All right, so make sure that you watch this. It's absolutely free. Take advantage of it. Then we have 500 free seller leads, free contracts, free scripts, free text message templates, and then our private Facebook group, okay? All that stuff's free for you here, all right? But if you need one-on-one coaching, all right, we'd have that too. That is available in our mentorship. So just keep that in mind. I haven't shared that in a while, so I want to make sure that everybody knows about it. Have a great day, everybody. I am going to get to work, all right? Take care. Bye.